you very much, Rachel, and hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for coming along on a particularly cold and wet day. So it's really nice to have the winter warmers back again. And if a bit of a shock to think back to COVID and lockdown, but that's when we started these sessions. And the idea was that we'd be able to sort of talk to people directly a little bit, tell you a little bit about what's going on with us, and something a little bit different from what you might read in the social media, etc., and the things we've been doing. So thanks very much for coming along. And also having it recorded is really, really great. So we can, a lot of people watch it later on when they're able to, perhaps not able to on a Monday afternoon. So thank you so much for coming. Yeah, as Rachel said, this is a sort of real opportunity for us to get together. And I want to just kick off with my screen sharing. Just give me a second. Here we go. See now, okay, Rachel, just nod. Great, thank you. Yeah, so welcome. We make these sessions as free as possible. Well, we make them free for everybody so we can encourage people to attend. There is a QR code right at the end of my little bit here. So if anybody wants to scan that and donate to our latest appeal, that would be brilliant. So thank you very much. But so what have we been doing? Well, lots, shall we say, and I'm not going to steal Eve or Kirsty's thunder on any of this. I just want to give you a little bit of overview about some of the things we've been doing. We attended the Revive conference recently, and this is the Grousemore Coalition. And that was really great to do, able to do our bit regarding animal welfare, describe to people what we want to see from the bills that are going, or the main bill that's going through Parliament at the moment, the Wildlife Management Scotland Bill. Yeah, good audience and good attendance. So the place felt busy, felt great, and we're really, really excited to be there. So I think Rachel was also excited to be there, and we managed to get a picture with our patron Chris Packham. Massive support. Some kind words from him all the time about how effective we are as a small team, working really hard on animal welfare issues, not just in Scotland but elsewhere. So this is us looking slightly awkward, and I don't know why my head's so massive. But more serious matters, what are we worried about? Well, certainly at the moment, we're still continuing to campaign about traps and snares and crow cage traps. And I recalled at that conference this time when I found this snared fox cub in the woods when I was working for the RSPB as the head of investigations. And from that, I was encouraged by Eve and the team to put together a little video somewhere that I discovered had quite a lot of, most recently had snares on it. And I'll just play that for you.
Yeah, here we go. Spring trap. So these spring traps are set across burns like this. So a log, an old telegraph pole, has been placed across by the gamekeeper. He's then placed this spring trap, this object in this cage here, and animals walk through this hole like stoats and weasels, and they get caught in a massive trap that springs onto their bodies and kills them. This is a crow cage trap, and we spotted this from some distance away on the skyline. It's a permanent structure made out of wood, and you've got a ladder here, and birds, crows, go down through the hole and they get caught in this area here. They're attracted to dead animals that the gamekeepers put inside the trap, and they go in and they can't get back out again, and the gamekeeper then comes and kills them. Sometimes they use what's called a call bird, which is a live crow that's placed in here, which attracts other crows in, and the killing just continues on these grouse moors.
So yeah, that was a key piece of work we were obviously describing at the Revive conference. And then moving swiftly on, obviously, on the snares, the others will fill you in greater detail about this, but we were giving evidence at the committee session regarding the Wildlife Management Bill. It was a tough one. There was quite a lot of people there from the shooting community who obviously don't want to see any change whatsoever by the sound of it. Yeah, we were gratified later to hear from the minister, and I'll let the others tell you the good news on that one. Let's go slightly back now in time to 1911. And I just wanted to always flip back and remember where we've come from. This is one of our founders, Miss Netta Ivory, one of the Ivory sisters, and literally started our society all that time ago, Scottish Society for the Prevention of Vivisection. And yeah, obviously now we work on all animals, and we have a broad church, if you like, where we're asked on many subjects, about many subjects, and asked for advice on anything from companion animal welfare to wild animal welfare, you name it. And what we wanted to do was actually celebrate one of our brilliant ex-members of the team, Libby Anderson. And Libby has been a real pioneer of wildlife, animal welfare, companion animal policy work over the years, campaigning hard and working hard at the Scottish Parliament and elsewhere. And we were able to present her with the Lord Houghton Award just a week or two ago. Lord Houghton was a stalwart of animal welfare causes. He was born in 1898 and died in 1996. And he worked with several directors of OneKind over the years. And we're one of 4 animal welfare charities that are lucky enough to be able to present this award every 4 years. So this year, Libby, we picked on Libby. Libby doesn't work for OneKind now, but she's certainly really prominent in the animal welfare world in Scotland and elsewhere. And she's on the Animal Welfare Commission. So we were delighted to be able to do that. It's one of those nice things you can do every now and again. I think, I don't know whether Libby's on the call, but Libby was suitably embarrassed, but also highly delighted all at the same time. So it was great. There's lots of pictures of her, which I quite nice to be able to show now, which I didn't do in the evening, of her standing by people wearing animal costumes and looking slightly bewildered. And here's she is with Robbie Marsland. Robbie's the director of the League Against Cruel Sports. And here's a really spectacularly bad costume, fox costume, that Libby's standing next to, fighting, talking about animal hunting with dogs and fox hunting, those sorts of issues, and snaring as well. And looking more serious, this is Libby in action, looking like she's on the BBC, describing, in the background there, somebody's wearing a little placard about circuses. So prominent in making, banning circus animals back in the day. So yeah, that's it for me. The busy world continues of trying to juggle our priorities, particularly when it comes to all animals. At the moment, we're running an appeal, which is our helping pigs and a festive paradox, we're calling it. Not pigs in blankets, but mothers in cages. So if you'd like to donate to that appeal, we'd be really, really grateful, either via our website directly or just scan the QR code. And it'll keep us fighting. Lots of stuff to continue onwards regarding animals and agriculture. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Eve to continue our presentations and tell you what's actually been happening in more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. I'll just pass over to the audience. Does anyone have any questions? Again, you're welcome to pop them in the chat or to speak out loud. But yeah, we'll just carry on with Eve's presentation for now, and we can catch up at the end.
Hi guys, just give me 1 second while I share my screen. It's been a wee while since I've done an online webinar. Sorry, 1 second. I believe that's it now up. Is that so? Okay, great. Sorry about that, guys. My computer wanted me to give it permission again because it's been so long. So here we go. So as you may know, we campaign on behalf of all types of animals at OneKind's. That includes wild, farmed, companion animals, and animals used in experimentation. So I just want to chat to you today about just a couple of our successes. This isn't exhaustive. Not all of our work can be so visible that I can put it on a slide. Whether that's all the policy work that Kirsty and Bob do, coalition work, we work with a lot of coalitions across the world, or actions that our supporters partake in that, while incredibly important, don't form a campaign as such. So it's crucial to us at OneKind that we are effective as we can be for the animals. And we don't just want symbolic successes, we want meaningful successes, those that have a real impact on animals. So let's just chat about a couple of our successes this year and the type of impact that's going to have on animals. So in January, in a huge victory for OneKind, MSPs voted in favour of ending the sport of fox hunting in Scotland, following 2 decades of campaigning from ourselves, our supporters, of course, and other like-minded organisations. The new legislation, which came into force a couple of months ago, has introduced a 2-dog limit for flushing wild mammals to guns, effectively putting an end to fox hunting packs. In 2002, as many of you will know, hunting wild mammals with dogs for sports was banned in Scotland. However, the law was unworkable because an exception in the legislation allowed an unlimited number of dogs to flush wild mammals to guns, and that allowed hunts to continue much as they had before the ban. And so that's why we had been campaigning for a real ban. Excuse me. So what does 20 years of campaigning look like? Well, I wish I could sum up 20 years in one slide. Unfortunately, I cannot. So what you're looking at is just a snippet of our really sort of public demonstrations throughout the years. Marches, this is our For the Foxes march, which we actually had 2, one in 2018 and one last year. I know some of you will have been on those with us. Rallies outside Parliament, TV debates. This is Bob here debating fox hunting on STV News earlier this year. And of course, our public support of MSPs, which was Alison Johnson here, working to improve animal welfare. And of course, while we have these highlights, not every action we take is so visible as I've mentioned. It's parliamentary work, it's signing petitions, letter writing actions, media work, raising awareness on social media. And most importantly, it's strengthening numbers. And that's why our supporters are so crucial. And that's why OneKind is always very open to working in collaboration with other organisations. Because of our group effort, foxes are no longer allowed to be chased and mauled to death in Scotland. Scottish Government commits to a snaring ban. Well, last month, the Scottish Government confirmed its proposal to ban the use of snares in Scotland, following decades of campaigning from OneKind. So this was monumental. I think many of you will know, but a snare is an anchored noose that traps an animal either by his leg, abdomen, or neck. And they're often used on driven grouse moors. And that's because they want to trap predators to the red grouse. So there's more red grouse available for commercial shooting, i.e. shooting for fun. And these traps inflict considerable physical and mental suffering. We don't have exact numbers for how many are trapped because it's not been well regulated, but wild animals, companion animals, and farmed animals are all victim to these traps. 76% of the Scottish public support a snaring ban, and so we're delighted that the Scottish Government has finally listened to the voices of Scotland's people. Our campaign to ban snares has been, I would say, our most prolific and the most consistent. And to finally hear that the government did intend to ban snares was an incredible moment for the OneKind team. And by OneKind team, I don't just mean staff, I mean volunteers and our supporters too. We are also delighted that our patron, Chris Packham, spoke to the media about our snaring win, stating, "These torture devices ought to have been banned a long time ago, and I'm glad that the Scottish Government has finally recognised snares for the unacceptably cruel traps that they are." Again, just a selection of photographs I wanted to share, and I believe some of these date back to as far as 2010. So much of these demonstrations pictured here were done in collaboration with our friends at the League Against Cruel Sports. So these three here, they were from last year's For the Foxes March, and that was a march calling on the Scottish Government to introduce a real fox hunting ban and also a snaring ban. And just a year later, we have an enacted ban on the hunting of foxes for sport and a commitment from the Scottish Government to ban snares. Some of you were there when we marched in 2022, which is what these photos are from. But you may remember we also marched in 2018 alongside League Against Cruel Sports. And I fought, and last year was with Scottish Badgers too. And so I just want to say a massive thank you. As we marched down the Royal Mile and rallied outside Scottish Parliament, we made our voices known, and it's because of these voices that we have these successes for animals. I just want to talk a wee bit about this photo, the image with "Welcome to Scotland, a snare-free country." It's actually from 2010, and we didn't have a snare proposal, a snare ban proposal back then. This was, as far as I know, just a campaign technique, but it really is something to look on now in 2023 with a ban on the horizon, knowing that very soon Scotland could indeed become a snare-free country. This year, we were also honoured to lead the Unbound the Greyhound Coalition. So it was 9 animal welfare organisations throughout the UK, and also including one international charity. And we're working together to end greyhound racing in Scotland. Last month, we were delighted that we secured more than 20,000 signatures on our open letter, which was our target to phase out dog racing in Scotland. Our Unbound the Greyhound campaign coalition is unique in that we just launched the campaign in June, and already we've secured our target signatures, which we are confident will lead to parliamentary action. This was a huge campaign focus for us for 2023. So how did we get there? Well, we worked with a brilliant social enterprise creative agency called Bold that helped us to produce a strong campaign with strong visuals and create a very visual, targeted and effective campaign message. We wanted to explore the welfare issues of greyhound racing, but also highlight that greyhound racing is on its last legs in Scotland. So empower people to take action. You know, now is the time, if not already, take action, and an end is in sight. We got to have a lot of fun with this campaign. Some more photos from me here. So we secured 12 of these bus ads throughout Glasgow and Edinburgh. And as you'll see, they have a QR code here, which allow people to scan, outtake them directly to our open letter where they could add their name. And we also encouraged our supporters to go out and take photos, especially if they had dogs. And we ran a social media campaign on these ads too. As a coalition, we also projected an animated video in the city centres of Edinburgh and Glasgow. I did want to show you this today, but I've had issues trying to stream videos over Zoom in the past. Seeing that Bob's worked, I should have done. However, I'll pop it in the chat after I'm finished chatting. It's an animated video that tells the story of 2 fictional greyhounds, Bob and Bea, and it's about highlighting the issues of greyhound racing and why an end is necessary. And we timed that to go out on the first day of Greyhound Week, which was a week by GBGB, that's the Greyhound Board of Great Britain, dedicated to celebrating the joy of greyhound racing. And so we snapped up that opportunity to show the reality of racing. We also, on that same day, projected these. That's the former Shawfield Stadium in Glasgow. That's just below Edinburgh Castle, as you know. And we also projected a couple other notable buildings throughout Glasgow and Edinburgh. And we're delighted that that was picked up by the media as well. With any good campaign, of course, comes celebrity support. And we've been astounded about the amount of celebrity support we've had for Unbound the Greyhound, such as Ricky Gervais, Biffy Clyro, Simon Neil, who's pictured here, Megan McCubbin, Chris Packham, David Olusaga. Olusoga, sorry. And this looked different for everyone. Some celebrities publicly added their name to our open letter. Others promoted the campaign on social media, or in the case of Simon Neal here, he very kindly allowed us to use this picture of him, pictured with Cass, who's one of our Unbound the Greyhound cover gals. We've told her story, you may have seen it. If not, this is Cass here too, and that's on our website. Simon very kindly allowed us to use this photo to push our open letter. As I said, it's been a very exciting campaign for us this year, and it's going to continue into 2024. So just keep your eyes peeled. This is just lastly, I just wanted to talk about this one. This is a different kind of campaign success in that it's not so much us aiming for change in Parliament, but a change in mindsets. So some of you may know each winter we campaign for an end to the use of reindeer in Christmas displays. So reindeer are herd animals, they're used to the quiet of the wilderness, the open space, the cool temperatures that surround them. However, very sadly, each year they are forced into small enclosures at garden centres, shopping centres. We've had adventure parks, and even sometimes taken to primary schools or people's homes for petting opportunities. So this summer, we commissioned an independent report that established the welfare needs of captive reindeer in the UK, that explores the impact of captivity on these reindeer, the impact of the entertainment events specifically, and also any recommendations to improve captive reindeer welfare. And the report highlighted a number of potential welfare issues with these displays, and it ultimately concluded that the use of reindeer in these events should be ceased due to welfare concerns. So following this, we continued our collaborative work with Animal Aid, Born Free and Freedom for Animals. We work on this campaign with them most years. And together we wrote to all councils throughout the UK to ask them to adopt a policy that prohibits the use of animals as entertainment, with the findings from our reindeer report. And we also contacted all the venues throughout the UK who had previously used live reindeer in their festive displays. So we're delighted to say that 32 venues have confirmed to us that these are venues, that use reindeer between 2019, 2022, that they will not be using reindeer in 2023. A further 102 events, while they've not confirmed this directly to us, we can see that they are not advertising the use of live reindeer this year. And just at this point, I just want to say that sometimes as an organisation, when we write to these venues, we don't even get a response, but I have noticed that our supporters almost always do. So our supporters' contribution to this campaign, just like all our campaigns, is crucial. So just want to round up with 2023 numbers. This is always a wee bit inaccurate and crude because not everything is so easy to just contain as a number. For example, I've written here that 20,300 online actions were taken. But what that doesn't include, it doesn't include the letters and the emails I mentioned about those people who wrote to the venues exhibiting reindeer. It doesn't include emails to the minister urging for a full snaring ban without exception, or the actions taken by supporters on social media. And this is because actually sometimes high numbers won't be the target for a campaign. Sometimes the focus will be personalization and conversation, and that's why these things won't always be recorded. This year so far, we've secured 96 pieces of media coverage. So as I've mentioned, we're unique in that we work on all categories of animals, and that includes in the media. We also don't just comment on the animals that we're campaigning for. If there's an animal welfare issue, we'll consider commenting. This 96 pieces of media coverage includes things such as debates on STV in favour of a fox hunting ban. These past few weeks, we've spoken a lot to the media about the pandas at Edinburgh Zoo going back to China. That's been with BBC, STV, Sky News, etc. Coverage of our projections, calling for an end to greyhound racing, was covered by the Daily Record. And actually, we managed to secure 20 pieces of media coverage on the Scottish Government's proposal to ban snaring. That included quotes from Chris Packham. I've chatted through these ads. These are the ads that we had throughout Edinburgh and Glasgow. but we also took out ads in some local magazines. We projected onto 6 buildings, and this year we also secured more than 2,000 new social followers, which is very high rates for OneKind. So that's all for me. I'll just conclude. I'll pop a link to the video in the chat, and also, of course, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eve. We have 2 questions here from the attendees. They're both on the Hunting with Dogs Scotland bill. So the first one is, has there been any known breaking of the fox hunt ban by hunts?
Do you want me to take that, Rachel?
Sure.
Yeah, well, League Scotland and Hunt monitors are out at the moment, as we know. I've heard that there's been a couple of incidents, but I don't have any details on what they are, what they consist of. But I think with anything like this, we expect there will be testing and breaches and of anything. I'm just recalling the mountain hare success where we managed to have the animals protected. I'm sure there will be breaches and there are things going on, and one of our big jobs is to actually make sure that we are monitoring afterwards to make sure that things are being complied with. But in this case, the League Scotland are out in the field with our friends, hunts, sabs, etc. So we'll see. But yeah, I've heard there's been at least a couple of incidents where that might have happened. So somebody or a pack or something somebody's used more than 2 dogs anyway, and I think that's being looked into. But it's early days, and we'll see what happens in the future.
Thank you. So the second question is, has Nature Scot issued any licenses to fox hunts to use more than 2 dogs?
I'm not sure of the detail on that either, but it was mentioned at the Revive conference. No, it wasn't. Sorry, at the committee meeting, the debate on the wildlife management bill, stage 1 of the management bill. One of the politicians mentioned that there was 1 license had been granted, and I'm assuming that's probably a foot pack somewhere. But again, we don't know the detail of that. It's a bit early to say what the details are. But yeah, we're going to be scrutinising any of this to see what licenses are being granted and for why, and for what purposes. But yeah, I'd been told, and certainly the hunting community were making a great big fuss recently that they weren't able to get any licenses. Yeah, some of the legislation is working, but obviously some isn't. But we need to make sure we're not back in the same position again, fighting for and watching for loopholes, etc. So yeah, that's all I have at the moment on that.
Okay, thanks again, Bob. I'll just, before passing over to Kirsty, I'll just quickly remind everyone, as there are some people who joined a bit later, that we are recording. So if you'd rather not have appear on camera, you can turn your cameras off, and people will just be muted during the presentation just for feedback and background noise, again, for the recording and the session. But you're welcome to unmute yourselves and ask any questions in between the presentations. Okay, thank you, Kirsty. I'll leave you to take over.
Thanks, Rachel, and thank you all for joining us today. It's lovely to be here with you. And I was going to give you a bit of an update on what our plans are for next year. And some of that will be ongoing work. There's always ongoing work, and as Eve mentioned, there are lots of little things that crop up that don't always play a part in our main campaigns, but there's a lot of sort of daily responding to emerging issues or queries or all sorts of different things. But there will be a couple of the bigger campaigns that we'll be carrying on. So Eve talked about Unbound the Greyhound, which has been one of our big pieces of work this year, and that will definitely continue. As she said, we've got more than 20,000 signatures on our open letter to the Scottish Government. And so the next stage is that we hope to hand that in. We will definitely send it to the government, and what we would like to do is hand it to the Minister in person, and we have requested that. So we're waiting to hear if that's going to be a possibility. But either way, the Scottish Government will hear from us. We'll receive that letter with all of your signatures, which I believe some of you may have signed, and thank you if you did. And then we'll keep working to bring an end to greyhound racing in Scotland, and continue with the Unbound the Greyhound Coalition work. The other thing that will continue is the Wildlife Management and Muirburn Bill, which Bob mentioned. So that's currently working its way through Parliament. That's the bill that will licence grouse shooting. It will licence the use of traps, and it will hopefully bring a complete ban on snaring. Now, this has been a contentious issue for decades and in recent months. So the ban on snaring is not yet in the bill, because there was a last sort of ditch attempt by some of the people who wanted to continue using snares to try and have licensed exceptions for newer designs of snares. So the Scottish Government did what it is their job to do, which is to listen to all different stakeholders. And so they didn't put a ban on snaring in the bill originally. They looked into the proposals that were being put to them for licensed use, and they have, as you've said, recently announced that they still plan to completely ban snaring with no exceptions whatsoever, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we want. But that will not come until stage 2 of the bill, which will be early next year. What they'll have to do is bring an amendment to add that ban into the bill. So that's something we will obviously be watching closely. There's no reason to be concerned. The government has committed to it. So I think at this stage, we can be fairly confident that it's going to go ahead, but obviously we'll keep a close eye on that and continue to support the bill as it progresses through Parliament. And the other thing that we're going to be really doing is continuing to work on how we can bring as much strengthening as possible to the regulation of other types of traps. And as Bob mentioned, spring traps and crow cage traps are other types of traps that are still being used. What this bill will do is introduce licensing of them, which is a good thing. That will help bring some additional protection. It doesn't go as far as we would like, but what we will do is we'll continue working as the bill progresses to try and strengthen that as much as possible, because some of the detail will come later after the bill goes through. Nature Scot will have to develop a licensing scheme, so we'll work as much as we can to influence that and make sure that it brings the strongest protections that are possible. And that work will be ongoing probably throughout much of next year to develop that licensing scheme. And so we'll keep doing everything we can there. And we have some new work next year. So there's going to be a lot. We'll be sort of really pushing on with our work for farmed animals. And that is ongoing, but we'll have a refreshed focus, I think, for next year. So there's 2 things that are happening right around now for farmed animals, which are quite significant. And one is the Agriculture Bill, which is currently in Parliament, and that brings new farming subsidies. Since the UK left the EU, all of the devolved nations have had to do that. It gets a bit dry and technical, but it's really important because it will really make some big changes to farming potentially, and the decisions that are made now will have really strong repercussions for the lives of farmed animals. So we're already working to try and make sure that animal welfare is really prioritised during that process. I'll be giving evidence to the Rural Affairs Committee in Parliament on Wednesday on that topic about how animal welfare should be in that bill. The other thing that's happening soon is that the Scottish Government is going to publish their draft Good Food Nation plan, which is supposed to be a strategy to fix all of the problems in our food system, which is quite ambitious because there are a lot of problems in our food system. And I think the fact that both of these things are happening at once, it brings a really big opportunity to really change food and farming for the better, and including trying to make lives better for the millions of animals who are in their food systems, and some of whom suffer a lot on a daily basis. So we're really working to make sure that happens. I am concerned that although, as I said, it's a big opportunity, I'm concerned that it's not going to be realised. But we're going to keep working as much as we can on that. And so a lot of our work next year will focus on making sure that animal welfare is remembered in all of these changes around farming. And we want to bring the attention back to some of the animals who are too often forgotten. So a lot of the discussions around policy on farming seem to centre on cattle and sheep. And obviously we have concerns for cattle and sheep too, but the ones who are too often forgotten are those who are in some of the most intensive systems with some of the biggest welfare problems, such as pigs and chickens and laying hens. So we want to really keep making sure that they're mentioned. And so I think we're going to focus our campaigning next year, particularly on pigs. And that's partly for the reasons I've just mentioned, and partly because the Scottish Government has committed that they will consult on ending the use of cages for laying hens. And that is fantastic, because ending cages for farmed animals is something we have been campaigning for years. And we're so happy they're doing that. But we don't understand why they have not included phasing out farrowing crates for pigs when they're one of them, well, probably the most confined an animal can be. And it's really terrible what the sows go through. So we're going to be trying to bring the attention back to pigs and make sure that they're not forgotten. And that work, like I said, has already started. I'll be giving evidence on Wednesday. Bob's already mentioned that we have an appeal for the pigs. And the next thing will be that we have a stall in Parliament at the end of January, and that will be about exactly what I just said, trying to convince MSPs to support the inclusion of farrowing crates when the Scottish Government consults on ending cages. So we'll be in Parliament for 3 days. We've got a stall. Bold, who are the design agency that Eve mentioned, who did our greyhound campaign, they're helping us make something that's hopefully like really visually interesting to draw the MSPs over and get them interested, and then we'll be able to tell them all about our concerns for pigs. So that will be the beginning, but we will continue to work on that throughout the year. So look to see more about that. We'll be communicating with you about that in the new year. And the other thing I wanted to tell you about is a bit different, and possibly something you haven't heard of before. I'd be interested to hear from any of you if you do know what it is. But what we would like to begin working on next year is a positive list for the types of animals that can be kept as companions. I think probably a lot of people haven't heard of that. It's kind of a new concept, and it's a little bit complicated sometimes, but it's really important. So what this is about is looking at the concerns we have for exotic animals that are kept as pets. And I usually use the term companion animals, but I think in a lot of cases, these animals aren't really companions because they're in a cage or a tank, and they don't have the same relationship with people that a dog or a cat would, for example. And too often their needs can't be met. And we're talking about a wide range of mammals and birds and reptiles, all sorts of species from all over the world that aren't really adapted to living in Scotland and aren't adapted to living in a confined home environment. And so this is something OneKind has worked in the past, and we're going to refresh and bring forward a new push on that next year. And that's partly because the Scottish Animal Welfare Commission has done a very thorough review and report about the concerns for exotic animals, and has suggested that the Scottish Government introduce a positive list. So what is a positive list? Like I say, it gets a bit complicated, but basically, instead of saying, here is a list of animals that can't be kept as pets, it's saying, here is a list of animals that can, and if they're not on the list, then it's not legal to keep them. So that would involve a lot of consideration, because there's a lot of issues around the way these animals are bred and traded that causes problems for things like conservation, for example, human health, zoonotic diseases, for example. So there'd be all sorts of considerations around that. And obviously from our perspective, one of the important considerations would be which animals can actually thrive, can have a good life in a home environment. And if they can't, they shouldn't be on the list. So that is going to be a big new piece of work for us next year, and that will be something that we'll be planning in more detail in the next couple of months. But definitely look out for that. We'll be looking for all of you to get involved, hopefully, and we'll tell you more in the months to come. I've already had a couple of initial conversations with some civil servants about this, and I think that there's a bit of an open door there. They're definitely not opposed to the idea. It's something they would potentially like to do, but it is very complicated and it would be a huge piece of work for the Scottish Government. And I think at the moment there's just not, it's not on their immediate time frame. But I think it's definitely something that we can put some pressure on and raise awareness of, and hopefully get something happening on that issue. So those are some of the big things we'll be working on next year, and we look forward to having you join us on that journey, hopefully. And yeah, let me know if you've got any questions.